Good afternoon, everybody. It's just gone midday. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes just in case there's anybody late to be joining us. In the meantime, for those of you who have signed up and who are online at the moment, could you please confirm in the chat that you can hear me okay, that the sound is all right? Once we've had that confirmed, we can get started with the presentation, but I just want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself and you can all hear me okay. So if you could just say yes in the chat box, which is on the right hand side, that'd be much appreciated. Or if you can just like the comment that I'm posting now. And once I've had that confirmed, we can get the presentation underway. Not seeing any confirmation, so please don't be shy. Just if you hit the like button, that'd be great. And then I can start the presentation for you. But I do just want to make sure that the sound quality is all right and you're hearing me without any problems. Okay, I'm still not seeing anything. I'll give it till 5 past and I will start the presentation and just have to hope that you're hearing me okay if nobody's able to like the comment on the right hand side. It's in the Q&A chat box.
I can hear you, Gemma, so let's just start. I guess everyone hope that everybody can.
Yeah, I'm assuming we just have some shy attendees today. Okay, so we'll get started. My name is Gemma Callow. I am the Communications Manager for the Brumbury's programme, leading on stakeholder engagement. I am joined today by my colleague Peter Edwards, who is the Principal Clean Air Zone Officer with overall responsibility for exemptions. We're going to give you a talk today. It is recorded. We will send you a link afterwards to share with family and friends. If you do have any questions throughout, please pop them in the chat on the right hand side, which is the little question mark speech bubble. And if you pop them in there as you think of them, we will answer them for you at the end if the presentation doesn't do that. So I will begin the presentation now. Okay. So Birmingham is introducing a clean air zone because poor air quality and air pollution has been declared a national health emergency. Every year in Birmingham, up to 900 people die from conditions linked to air pollution, such as cancer, heart disease and lung disease. People who live closer to the roads and the elderly are more vulnerable to this and inhale more exhaust fumes. As do children who are smaller, closer to the ground, closer to those concentrated exhaust fumes. They inhale 3 times as much air pollution than we do as adults, which affects their lung development and gives them reduced lung function. So I won't go through all the statistics on screen, but effectively we have been instructed by government that we have to do something about the air quality levels to bring them to a safe and legal limit, and that is why the Clean Air Zone is being introduced. So prior to COVID, we undertook some research and we ascertained that 50% of all journeys into the city centre were undertaken by private car. Of those journeys, 250,000 of them every single day were for less than 1 mile. So that's a 20-minute walk, a 10-minute cycle ride. So what the Clean Air Zone is intending to do in the first instance is to deter high polluting vehicles from entering the city centre. But secondly, to also get people who are undertaking those short journeys to consider alternatives such as walking, cycling or public transport to reduce the number of our cars on the road even further. So as mentioned, clean air zones are being mandated by government. They will be introduced to cities across the UK. Birmingham is first, the first clean air zone outside of London to be a category D. Bath introduced their clean air zone earlier this month, a category C. So each local authority sets the category and the boundaries. In Birmingham, we've opted for category D, as I mentioned, which means that we will be charging all high polluting vehicles, including private cars, as well as buses, taxis, lorries and vans. So the Clean Air Zone is the blue area on screen. It's everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. It's important to stress that a Clean Air Zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So a congestion charge, like in London, will charge every single vehicle to enter a designated area. The Clean Air Zone will only charge the most high polluting, which we anticipate will be about 1 in 4 vehicles. So when the zone launches on the 1st of June this year, if your vehicle meets the emission standards, you will not be charged and you do not need to take any action. However, from the 1st of June, if your vehicle does not meet the emission standards and you drive within the blue area, you will need to pay the daily charge. So the daily charge for cars, taxis and vans is £8 a day and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. It's important to note that a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. During that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you want for a single charge. But if you cross that midnight threshold, you'll be subject to 2 charges. So for example, if you drive in at 10 PM and leave at 3 AM, you've crossed the midnight boundary and therefore will need to pay for 2 days. You'll be able to pay online or over the phone using the government payment system. And you have a 13-day payment window, which includes 6 days before the day of your visit, the day of your visit, or 6 days after. You must pay within that time frame, and if you don't, you will receive a fixed penalty notice of £120, reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. Over 300 signs have been installed on the approach and boundary of the zone to warn you that you're entering, but that is the only warning that you will get. You won't receive a text or an email. It operates the same as London. So the onus is on you as a driver to know that you've entered, and it's on you as a driver to make the payment within that allocated time frame. So the big question is, will I be charged and what is a compliant vehicle? So there's a list of vehicles on screen that meet the emission standards, but the easiest thing to do is to go onto the Brumbreeze website, click on the link to the government vehicle checker and enter your registration details, and that will tell you whether or not your vehicle will be subject to the charges. The emission standard that we're looking to meet is a Euro 4 standard petrol or better, so this is in your V5C logbook, you can find this information. A Euro 6 diesel or better, gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell or hybrid electric, meeting those Euro 4, Euro 6 standards mentioned previously. To put it into context, most Euro 4 petrol vehicles came into circulation from 2006 onwards, and most Euro 6 diesel vehicles were manufactured from September 2015 onwards. I must stress it's the Euro standard that we're looking for, not the date of production. Those dates are just there as a point of guidance. The easiest thing to do is to use the government vehicle checker. Excuse me. So the objective of the Clean Air Zone is not to make money. If we make no money from this project, then that's great, because it means we've achieved our objective of deterring all high polluting vehicles from entering the zone, and therefore we have improved air quality. That is our objective. However, we do recognise that particularly in the early days, we will make money from this project. So we have to reinvest that money in transport related projects and policies. We cannot use it to support the council's general budget, and we cannot use it to support service provisions such as bin collections or repairing the floozy and the jacuzzi. So some of the schemes that have been identified so far include implementing controlled parking zones around the boundary of the zone to stop people parking on the outside, causing problems for residents and walking in. So those will be implemented. Funding for a hydrogen bus pilot scheme that will come into effect later this year. Improvements to city centre pedestrianisation to make walking safer and more appealing to do so, and bringing forward a series of active and sustainable travel improvements, so bicycle lanes, etc., to again make cycling safer and more appealing to do so, and again particularly for those journeys referenced earlier that are less than 1 mile, giving people a safe alternative to private car. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Peter. He will talk you through the support that's available, particularly for those of you that are living in the zone.
Thank you, Gemma. Yes, hi, my name is Peter Edwards, Principal Clean Air Zone Officer with overall responsibility for delivering the exemption side of things for the Clean Air Zone, but also some of the financial incentives that we'll talk about in later slides. So obviously this webinar is aimed at people that live in the Clean Air Zone, so I'm going to focus on that primarily. It's important to, before we discuss the exemptions, is to kind of say where they've come from. They haven't been plucked out of thin air. So when we did a consultation in 2018, the consultation was not, shall we do a clean air zone? The consultation was, we need to implement this clean air zone mandated by government, public health emergency. We're going to do it. How should we do it? And who do we think would be most impacted by this? And how should we potentially support them? Off the back of that consultation, which received close to, I think, 12,000 responses, the most the Birmingham City Council consultation has ever had, a suite of kind of exemptions and financial incentives was put together. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next couple of slides. So people that live within the clean air zone, if they drive a non-compliant vehicle, and I'll stress that again, you do not need to apply for an exemption if your vehicle is already compliant. So if you check your vehicle on the vehicle checker that Gemma's just been talking about, and it says zero charge, then there is no real further action for you to take. Please don't apply for an exemption. We will simply decline it and send you an email saying you don't need it. But if your vehicle comes back as being charged £8 a day on the government vehicle checker and you live in the clean air zone, then you can apply for an up to 2-year exemption. I think on the next slide we'll talk about what we'll ask to prove that, but just while we're here, just in case you want to share this with any friends or family or anyone, we also have exemptions for people that live in the zone and earn less than work in the zone and earn less than £30,000 a year, people who operate fleets like commercial vehicle fleets within the clean air zone, and people who are visiting the 3 hospitals or medical centres within the zone that offer out of hours or emergency services. So that's Birmingham Children's Hospital, Bathrow Medical Centre and Badger Medical Centre. That will be administered by a voucher system where you'll be given a voucher when you visit the centre if you visited a non-compliant car, which you then credit online, and that waives the charges. All of the resident, commercial and resident, commercial and worker exemptions are all available to apply online at the moment, front page of our website, brumbridge.co.uk. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the information specifically for residents. It's the easiest exemption to apply for. It requires the least proof. All we require from you is 2 pieces of proof that A, you are the registered keeper of the vehicle, of the non-compliant vehicle. The only things to note around that is that the vehicle must be registered in your name and must be registered to the property in the zone. You must be the registered keeper and the vehicle must be registered in the zone. If you provide that, the only other thing that we need is then something to prove that you do in fact live in the zone, and those proofs are shown on screen there. So you apply online, create an account, make sure you click resident account when you're creating your account, and then you upload these 2 documents. That will come through to my team and we will process that. And usually we can process those in a matter of minutes, really, because it's only 2 bits of proof. So please ensure you read the terms and conditions. There's a guidance note online to show you how to use the system. You just need to take a picture of the documents, or you can scan and upload them. It's up to you. We accept pictures. We can take a picture of your utility bill. We want to make it as easy as possible. So it's really important to note that just because you live in the clean air zone and you have a non-compliant vehicle, that doesn't mean you're exempt. You need to prove that exemption to us. It's not an automatic process. So please, if this is you and you live in the zone and you have a non-compliant vehicle, or friends, family, etc., please encourage them to apply as soon as possible. We will get those. We are working as hard as we can to ensure that all eligible people who have made the effort to apply will be added onto the list before the zone goes live on the 1st of June. But if you apply in the middle of May, when we know that we're going to have massively high volumes of applications, then we cannot guarantee that you will be on that list on the 1st of June. So my advice is to apply as soon as possible. and to re-emphasize that you're not exempt until we tell you you're exempt, and if you're not on that list on the 1st of June, you may be liable to, or you would be liable to pay charges after the 1st of June. We will be asking people to renew them after the 1st year, but for the time being, just please apply as soon as possible. Encourage friends and family to do so. Next slide, please, Gemma. So in addition to the kind of exemptions, the main exemptions that you can apply for online, we also have kind of a range of more specialist exemptions which may be of interest to some people on the call. It's important to note that having a blue badge does not grant you an exemption from clean air zone charging. However, if you are in receipt of higher levels of disability living allowance or PIP, so these benefits, then you may have already, or you may be able to apply for, a disabled passenger tax classification for that vehicle. That's a tax classification from the DVLA mentioned on your V5 document. So have a look at your V5. You may already have it if you're in receipt of these benefits, or you can apply online, and there's information about that in the exemptions part of our website. If you click on blue badge disability information, or there's a link to the .gov website there. Motorcycles are exempt. Historic vehicles are exempt, so that's vehicles over 40 years old. Again, that is a national classification on your V5 logbook, so that's automatically done. And then you've got more specialist vehicles like showman's vehicles used for circuses and fairs and big events, things like the German market, those sorts of vehicles, cranes, that sort of thing. And also emergency services vehicles are exempt. And then finally, community and school transport. So that is ring and ride, school buses, that sort of thing. So that's not for profit transport. They can also have an exemption. Next slide, please, Gemma. So we've covered off all the exemptions. All the information on the exemptions is on our website, and as I say, you can apply for the residence exemption today, and I would encourage you to do so. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because these supporting funding packages aren't available to residents. Rather than having a financial package of incentives, the decision was taken to grant a longer exemption. So you have 2 years exempt as a resident, so through to 2023, summer of 23. But just to touch on these, as it might be interesting for friends and family, etc., people working in the clean air zone who meet the criteria for the exemption can also apply for a scrappage scheme. So we've made an announcement on that this morning on who our scrappage partner will be, which is Motorpoint. So if you have a non-compliant vehicle and you meet these criteria, you'll be able to scrap that vehicle via Motorpoint, and you will either be offered £2,000 towards the cost of a compliant vehicle, or a mobility credit or a travel credit, which can be used on the Transport for West Midlands Swift card. So that isn't open for application yet, but will be in the coming months. We have a fund for the HGVs, so coaches and large vehicles, 10 million, that is open for application at the moment. And also, if you know any taxi drivers or are speaking to any taxi drivers, they also can access funding to upgrade their vehicles, and that's an incredibly popular scheme. We've already awarded funding to close to, I think, 800 taxi drivers. So you can see that even before the Clean Air Zone has gone live, we're having an impact because those drivers have upgraded their vehicles to cleaner and greener vehicles. So that will already be impacting on the air quality in the city centre. Next slide, please, Gemma. Okay, so we've talked about the exemptions, we've talked about the incentives. Gemma's talked about how the Clean Air Zone is going to work. I think it's important to also kind of put this into a wider context. The Clean Air Zone is the kind of the headline in Birmingham's transport plan. It's there to try and improve the air quality, but it's also being used as kind of a trigger point to try and encourage people to think about how they travel and to help tackle some of the issues we have in the city around our transport network. At the moment, we have a heavy over-reliance on private motor vehicles. There are a number of issues associated with that, from congestion, air quality, and the health impacts of people just not travelling actively. So we have quite a big issue with obesity in this city. So the transport plan is looking wider than the Clean Air Zone and is looking at these 4 big visions or big moves to try and improve the health and well-being in the transport network within the city. So it's important just to give a bit of detail on that. So the first one is to reallocate road space away from the private motor vehicle and give that space to people who are walking, cycling and using public transport. So that might be in the form of bus lanes, cycle lanes, bus priority measures where only buses can travel through a certain junction to make it easier and more efficient for bus journeys. The next one is to transform the city centre, make it a nicer place for people to walk and cycle, pedestrianisation schemes potentially, and also to try and open up the city centre for public transport. So at the moment we don't really have cross-city bus services. There is a consultation out at the moment from Transport for West Midlands about those services, because at the moment they're just not tenable because there's too much traffic in the city centre. The bus companies can't run them because they can't get through the traffic, but Birmingham City Council is putting in measures to restrict some of the private motor vehicle traffic and make it easier for buses to get through the city centre. The next one is about prioritising active travel in local neighbourhoods. So we know obviously that everything we've talked about so far has kind of been city centre focused. You on the call obviously potentially live quite close to the city centre in the clean air zone. However, we're also looking to improve things in residential neighbourhoods in the suburbs of the city, and this could be in the form of things like low traffic neighbourhoods, which have been introduced in various areas across the city, and again the introduction of cycle lanes and making it easier for people to walk and cycle those shorter journeys, pop into the shops, half a mile that Gemma referenced in her slides. We already know that far too many vehicle journeys are for a mile or less, and these are journeys that potentially could be walked or cycled. And then the final one is trying to kind of manage demand by using parking, so removing parking, free parking, on-street parking within the clean air zone, removing some parking altogether, giving that space back to people walking or using public transport, because we know that kind of sometimes cars are parked in bus lanes, etc., can have a real impact on the network performance. And also, as Gemma's already referenced, just looking at kind of controlled parking zones in and around the clean air zone, so that people aren't dumping their vehicles and negatively impacting on people that live near the zone. So that's that slide. If we can move across to the final one. Thanks, Gemma. And so we've talked about, kind of, I said, about a wider context. This kind of final slide is putting it even a wider context of the climate emergency. Birmingham City Council has set a zero carbon target by 2030. This won't be achieved on just by Birmingham City Council. It needs the support of residents, communities, businesses, etc. And just to kind of point, as we already have in terms of, like when I talked about the taxi drivers, that the clean air zone is already kind of acting as an enabler of change. So as part of our funding from government, there is a massive expansion of the city's electric vehicle charging points going to take place. 20 hydrogen buses going onto the streets ahead of the Commonwealth Games in 22, and also looking at a scheme to potentially purchase and lease up to 50 electric hackney carriages out to the industry, because we know it's not easy for those drivers to upgrade their vehicles to electric, because they're something like 60 to 70,000 pounds a go. So there's lots of other kind of supplementary work going on in addition to the implementation of the clean air zone. So I think that's important just to finish off with. That's the final slide on this kind of last one here. We just have some contact details. We hope that we've covered all your questions and queries, and we're going to have Q&A shortly, but if you think of something after the session, please head to our website. If you can't find the answer on our website, we would hope you'll be able to, but if you still can't find it, then please email us. That's that cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk is monitored by my team throughout the day, Monday to Friday, so we'll be able to answer your query there. So that completes the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I can't see any questions at the moment. It's just loading. Okay, yeah, there is one. Okay. So there's a question here about quite specific circumstances about somebody who has a small diesel car, I'm assuming, that isn't compliant. You live right in the centre of town. What do you suggest I do? Well, I suggest that you apply for a 2-year exemption, so you wouldn't have to pay any clean air zone charging for 2 years. So that gives you the opportunity to think about what you want to do in terms of replacing that car. You don't have to, if you want to continue using a vehicle, if that's what your lifestyle requires. it's really important to note that in order to achieve compliance, you don't need to buy a brand new car. So you could sell your 2013 diesel and buy a 2007 petrol, and you would meet the compliance standards, so that by the summer of 23, when your exemption runs out, you would be compliant. So my suggestion is to apply for the exemption, and then you don't have to pay for 2 years. There's another one. I've registered already 2 years ago, but I've heard nothing back. I assume you're referring to the exemptions. If you haven't heard anything back from us, then I would suggest that your application has been approved. You can check that by You can check that by logging back into your account. So if you go to the Bunbury's page and you click apply for a permit, rather than creating a new account, you can log in and look at your account. And I would suggest, if you haven't heard from us, then we've simply approved it. We usually only come back to you if what you've supplied isn't correct, but you can check that online. And if because you applied a year ago, you've forgotten your login details, you can reset your password. And if you're having any issues with resetting your password, then email us and we will check that for you. But no, you don't need to do the application again if you've already applied, but make sure you log in and just double check in case anything's gone wrong there. So yeah, and just to say that so applications have been approved. We've approved some close to 1,500 odd exemption applications at the moment, but none of them have been issued. In the next month, we will begin to issue those applications, and if you are approved, you will receive a confirmation email saying, hello, your application, your exemption has been approved and you are now exempt from Clean Air Zone charging. But yeah, just log into your account, and if you have any trouble logging in or whatever, just send all your details, your name, etc. to Clean Air at Birmingham, and we'll look at that. Okay. No further questions. My clock says 12:29, so I'll just kind of put myself on mute for a second and just see if any further questions come in by past. If not, we'll just draw the call to a close. But just to remind you that everything's been recorded. We will send this out with a whole host of information after the meeting. Please forward that on to friends and family, colleagues, etc. The whole idea of these sessions is to spread the word as much as possible. So we'd appreciate your help in doing that also when you receive all that information after the session. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any further questions coming through. So thank you ever so much for joining the session today with myself and Gemma. I hope you found it really useful. As I say, the two key takeaways, please go to our website, please check your vehicle, and then if you think you're eligible, and you probably will be if you live in the Clean Air Zone, it's pretty straightforward, then please apply for that exemption, and please apply as soon as possible so we can get that processed and done well ahead of the 31st of May, with the zone going live on the 1st of June. Okay, thanks once again for joining, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.